Welcome along to Firhill. We're here for the Betfred Cup clash today between Partick Thistle and Celtic at Glasgow Derby. You've just been watching highlights of Celtic in Athens, that disappointing night for them. Chris Sutton, of course, took in that game. Stephen Craigan's with us as well today. Get your questions in. We're live on Facebook and Twitter as well. Plenty to get through. Hopefully John Hartson will be with us in a minute as well.
Just finishing his breakfast, Darrell.
Just finishing his breakfast, apparently. So hopefully a couple of minutes and he'll be in with us. And you just heard what John had to say about Boyata as well at the end of that game. Some strong words there. But let's briefly reflect back, because Celtic arrive here today, and I guess the question marks now are over the mindset of the team, the manager as well, given the fact the transfer window's still open and business to be done clearly, Chris.
Yeah, a lot of questions need answering, but for Celtic today it's about getting back to winning ways, laying down a marker, and the start of the treble, isn't it, the Betfred Cup? So, you know, it's a must-win game, you feel, for Celtic.
It has been the start of the treble the last couple of years, the spark.
I would expect Celtic to win today. It will probably
he's
test
stuck his neck out there, isn't he?
It will probably test their mindset a little bit, you know, because sometimes players can feel sorry for themselves. Players find it easy to hide behind things. Players look for excuses. You know, some players may hide behind the lack of signings, the John McGinn story, Brendan's comments, Peter Lawwell, the kind of confusion there. Players sometimes are quite happy to sit in the background. So today I expect to see them to come out on the front foot to try and prove that it doesn't affect them, that they're better than that, and obviously have a good performance.
As a centre-back yourself, what did you think of the standard of Celtic's defending the other night?
Well, it was naturally poor. You know, probably even from the right-back area. I think you look at the 3 goals in over the 2 legs, you know, Mikael Lustig hasn't covered himself in glory. When you get older, you lose a little bit of mobility. You find it more difficult to defend 1v1 in wide areas. And certainly the goals and the situations Lustig found himself in, he's getting beat too easy. Of course, the ball comes in the middle and you have to look at centre-halves, but you have to try and stop the cross at source.
Who do you blame for that then? Is the way the defence is set up? If it's purely personnel, does it come back to the management team as well?
The manager naturally buys the players in and pick. Well, we think
they had some injuries and
picks the team. Of course they have,
as well.
You know, Mikael Lustig played in the World Cup.
Yep.
You know, you have to expect that he's good enough to cope with that kind of situation.
But Gamboa played well against Rosenborg.
Yes, well, he quite clearly doesn't fancy Gamboa because you know he played against Aliskert and he hasn't really played since.
Yeah, Rosenborg as well. Yeah.
But I think the frustration, Darrell, has been it's been an area for a number of seasons which has been Celtic's Achilles heel, and because of superb home performances against Astana and Beersheva. But even the away games were, close and Celtic didn't defend well. And the centre-halves area is an area of big concern, as is the right-back.
Michael Gaw question in there. Is Ali McCoy still working in Scottish football this season?
He just does what he wants.
He's coming later on today. And on that note, we've got John Hartson as well with us. So John, come in.
Hi boys.
Come on, take your place at the end. We're live on Facebook and Twitter and all sorts. Morning to you. As you probably just heard there, we were chatting about Celtic the other night, and viewers on Facebook have just been listening to your post-match comments about Boyata and other things as well. I mean, you've had a few days now to take it all in, to, I guess, look back in the game. John, what's your feeling, emotion now about the way Celtic performed and the knock-on effect this season?
Well, ultimately, it stems from the first game, doesn't it, where Celtic took the lead very early on, and then they conceded in the 44th minute, bad goal to give away. Then I think they had, it was more than half an hour to try and get that extra goal that would have given them a bit of an advantage going over to Athens. They had half an hour to do it. They couldn't break AEK Athens down. Then it's always a difficult scenario when you've got to go for the second leg. You know you've got to score. But defensively, the timing of the goals, they conceded a goal very early in the game. And then in the second half, they conceded another goal, giving themselves a mountain to climb. And ultimately, yes, you look at it defensively, they could have brought 1 or 2 in. Boyata could have been there. But I don't think they played particularly well anyway to get through AEK Athens. And they've got what they deserved. They're out of the Champions League. It's a case of now regrouping, going with what you've got in terms of your strongest team today, because this could potentially be a dangerous game.
Yep. Can't afford to lose again, that's for sure.
They're treble winners. This is the start of a potential treble. They've got an 8th title to go on and win. And bottom line is, you've got to put all the unrest now around the football club, put it to bed. McGinn's gone. No point talking about McGinn all the time.
What would you do with Boyata?
Well, Scott McGill's just asked me the question coming in. He's asking, have you guys ever seen an agent act the way Boyata's agent acted so close to a big game?
It happens all the time, Darrell. It happens all the time. I think the agent's gone Boyata's gone to the World Cup. Celtic have allowed his contract to run down, by the way. That's not without making a good effort and attempt to get him on a longer-term contract.
Yep.
He went, Chris, with a year left on his contract. He performed very, very well out at the World Cup. His agent is going to be inundated with calls saying Boyata's only got a year left, but I don't agree.
Could it be?
Well,
surely they could deal with it
hang on a
differently,
minute on the agent thing. Can I just say on the agent thing? Surely it's the player's prerogative to tell the agent what to do. So Boyata, let's not, Boyata has to take the blame for this. The agent doesn't take the blame. You tell your agent what to do.
But that's what I'm saying. Players hide behind people nowadays.
If
Players are quite prepared to sit and
fit,
tell the people out there.
He's in the wrong because he's still a Celtic
Well, he was
player.
fit.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Well, if he was fit, then...
Brendan said before the game Boyata was fit.
He did. He told us that before the
Well,
game.
he should have been there then. If he was fit, he should have been travelling with the group because he's still a Celtic player.
Correct. We'll come back to Boyata on the show a bit later on. Dean King's asking, do you think Lustig has to go now? What's your thoughts? Now, you already mentioned the fact that he was scoring all 3 goals.
It depends if he can get a replacement.
Well,
is he good enough to play in Scotland? Yes. But I think when you move on to the Champions League and looking even Europa League, is he going to be good enough? I think there's no doubt his game has been deteriorating over the last 18 months. I don't think he's looked the same player that when he first came in. So somewhere along the line, they're going to have to try and replace Anthony Ralston's in the background. He done quite well.
Yeah.
Last season when he played, I know he went to Dundee United and we watched him play.
Last season.
So
ahead of Gamboa.
Is it somewhere along the line he's got to get an opportunity to potentially go and play and try and replace Lustig?
A lot of comments coming in about the disco lights that you mentioned.
Is there, Darrell?
Yep, many comments.
Is there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, go on then.
Well, I mean, do you also stand by what you said? Was it tongue-in-cheek, Chris? I mean,
yes, it was to some extent, but there's a very serious point to it. To spend £2.5 million on disco lights, and Celtic fans would be wondering, where are the players? Why aren't we strengthening? Brendan Rodgers has been in 2 years, and these are his words. The squad is weaker this season. I think that's unacceptable. Don't you?
Well, but do you agree with it, John? You heard what he said during the game?
They certainly defensively, they'll say they've strengthened. They've strengthened up top with Edouard. Sorry. And for me, defensively, they had to strengthen. If you're a manager that's been as successful as Brendan Rodgers and you go to your board with a list of... Because you must have given him targets of what he wanted. And if they haven't got them in, then they're accountable.
John, they brought in 2 centre-halves in January. They brought in Compere and they brought in Jack Kendry, irrespective of whether people think they're good enough or not.
And that
was the choice.
That's not Peter Lawwell's fault.
No, that was the choice. So then you brought in 2 centre-halves. You've now got 5 centre-halves they've got. You then go back in June or July and say, but you know what? I actually need another one. And you think, hold on a minute. There has to be a balance somewhere along the line.
You think they've spent enough?
Well, they've got 5 centre-halves. Don't bring them in then. Why not just combine those 2 players and Sviatchenko left? So, there's not many clubs in Scotland that have 5 centre-halves. Yeah. Whether they're good enough or not is irrelevant because they've decided to bring them in.
It's not irrelevant.
It is because they've decided to bring them in.
Well, they need to be good enough. That's the point. Yeah.
Just to balance this out, Ryan Tinney, a question there which included he was asking, do you think there's been a massive overreaction? Effectively, he was asking because Europa League. If you look back a couple of seasons ago, you'd have probably said a couple of years in the Champions League, one in the Europa under Brendan. Well, I'm just trying to balance out. Is he right to say that there's been too much of an overreaction, John?
Well, listen, when Celtic lose, there is always an overreaction. There's so many Celtic haters out there. It was like you swear the other night when Rangers went through this, the press almost celebrated Rangers going through.
But the Celtic fans were among the people who were angry.
It's like you're always going to deal with that. When you've been so successful as they have been, whenever you lose a game, there is going to be criticism. Overreaction, you get used to it, playing for Celtic.
Yeah, but it's not... I don't think it is an overreaction. I think it's a massive disappointment for Celtic not to achieve Champions League group status,
especially with what's at stake, Chris. £35 million, been able to kick on again, sign new players, keep your best players as well.
Yeah, but I'll just go back to this. The Brendan comment about the squad being weaker. He hasn't just walked in the door here. Celtic have had 2 years to build. They've accumulated money through the Champions League group stages. They needed to get there again to keep moving forward, and that hasn't happened. And then you ask, why hasn't it happened? And it hasn't happened because I think there's been a complacency over the summer. They haven't dealt with the Boyata situation at all. Well, he's a disgrace. Shouldn't, Reid is playing in the under 20s today.
Again,
no,
Chris?
Absolutely not. Shouldn't play in the under 20s. Shouldn't put the hoops on again. Absolutely not. Get him out of the club. It could have been dealt with differently, and they shouldn't have let Boyata get to this stage. And if it was going to get to this stage, do you know what? They should have got somebody else in.
But that's an emotional decision, because if he's still here when the window closes, Brendan has to look and think, are Celtic a better team with him in them or within the side or not? He then has an asset which is getting a good wage.
We're not talking about Baresi here. We're talking about Boyata.
Well then, what's the fuss then? He didn't play, so what then? But everybody seems to be, Boyata didn't play, Celtic went out because Boyata didn't play. That seems to be the reaction since the result.
Well,
that tells me he's their best centre-half.
Celtic weren't good enough over the two legs
they weren't, John,
beat the AK
but
Athens.
Boyata on the side, there'd have been a better team.
They have to work off the back
side.
of the situation. And in their hour of need, where was Boyata?
Right, Ali McHugh's asking, can you ask Chris what purpose does Lee Congerton serve? No signings. I mean, listen, I'm going to come back to that in the live programme today because that's something we're going to talk about in the build-up to the game. Before we go, and there's literally hundreds of questions coming in about Celtic. It is the live game today. But there's a lot of other games in the Betfred Cup as well today, and some teams in action, including Hearts are away to Dunfermline today. And you said they're taking a massive forward. Great start to the season for them.
I think 4,000 tickets have sold. You know, we saw the energy and the appetite for the game last week Hearts had against Celtic. Just the drive, the kind of reincarnation of Hearts, effectively, how they used to be, how they used to perform at Tynecastle when the old firm went. I thought they were great, they were energetic, they were on the front foot. So no surprise for me they're taking 4,000.
Compliment for Craig Levein.
Yeah, it is, because he's rebuilt the team.
You never know.
Well, there was huge question marks of when he's rebuilt the side, will he be competitive? Will they get back to where they should be?
So far, so good.
And so far,
it's nice from Steve, and I wonder whether Michael Stewart will follow suit.
Well, you were the one digging him out as well back at East Fife when he thought he made a horrendous choice not playing Stephen McLean.
Just the truth.
So he's worked it out.
Yeah. Disappointing for Hibs during the week, losing to Mulder, although they put up a really good fight. They're back in action tomorrow against Ross County. Neil Lennon will just want to move on from that. I mean, they certainly didn't disgrace themselves.
Yeah,
they were very close to get to the playoff round.
Yeah, well, I know, but Neil said himself they need a little bit more in terms of more bodies in
experience as well. John McGinn would have helped if they'd held him for a couple more weeks, of course.
I think goal to mould, it was always going to be difficult, I felt, but Neil feels he can take Hibs further if he's given the back in there,
It almost just looked one game too far. When the season starts, you're playing Thursday, Sunday, Thursday. It almost and you're going back to the same players continually.
But if it was that close, you do think one player like McGinn could have made the difference?
Well, there's no doubt Hibs would have been a better side with John McGinn, but it was almost in the end he just ran out of fuel a little bit, So
I think
it was unlucky.
They've shown defensive frailties, haven't they? The early part of this season, and that's their issue. They were actually well in the game. I think Neil will be seething.
Yeah, and it would have been Zenit next. In the
well,
end. They scored 8 in the end against Dynamo Minsk to go through. Extra time.
Yeah. Did you back them?
Nothing back. No. Do you bet? No. But I tell you what, Dynamo Minsk 4 up from the first leg. You thought they were certain to take over.
Well, you would, Darrell. 4 up, yeah. Woo, what an advantage.
Any other games? Listen, he's on one already, isn't he? He's on one. There's a surprise. Any other games catch your eye today? Aberdeen, St Mirren, top flight affair. Livingston.
I'll tell you what. Also,
well too.
Just want to say, Dundee Ayr. Ayr have had a terrific start to the season. Really good. They beat Partick Thistle twice already. On the front foot, I watched Dundee last weekend, and they were okay in spells against Aberdeen, lacking a little cutting edge. They always have at the top end of the pitch. So Ayr United going to Dundee could be an upset.
The old wheels are off at Motherwell.
Well, they're not off.
I'd wondered when that was coming back. It was a matter of time.
But they are just about hanging on.
They got to Livingston today, which
should be.
Kenny's looking. They did well in the games earlier.
The ball's going to take a doing today. The ball is going to take an absolute doing. Oh, it is. What a shadow of a doubt.
Okay. On that note, I think we should end this, gentlemen. Thank you very much. We're back live with you today, midday for this Betfred Cup last 16 game.